Thank you so much for attending my PowerPoint presentation on removed abilities. Valve's mistakes. Now we're going to start off with a banger, Riki Sleeping Dart. This ability was a unit target spell on a relatively low cooldown and an insane cast range that would put the target to sleep for a considerable amount of time. At first, this ability flew under the radar because there isn't a whole lot of obvious synergy with Riki's kit. However, Position 4 players, always the brightest among us, realized that they could just pick Riki and then spam Sleeping Dart whenever they could at any visible enemy heroes. It was annoying to deal with because the only way to wake up from it was for an enemy hero to deal damage to you, and if they never did, you would just sit there for a very, very long time. It was a valid strategy as Riki to just waddle around after the carry in the jungle and invisibly cast Sleeping Dart on them off cooldown to prevent them from farming. Now, Valve is content to leave a lot of annoying abilities in the game for a very long time, but Sleeping Dart clearly crossed a line, and Valve decided to get rid of it after just a couple of updates. This one is gone forever, and no one misses it. Next up is a spell that's very near and dear to my heart, Lich's Sacrifice. This ability allowed Lich to kill a friendly creep on its way to the lane in order to restore his own mana pool. It gave him a very strong bread and butter of maxing out his Q and using Sacrifice to fuel him as he cast it on the offlaner relentlessly. While the mana regeneration was a nice upside, the real benefit of it is that you would prevent the enemy heroes from getting any of the gold or XP from that creep. It effectively functioned as a I win the lane button, and it's very understandable why Valve got rid of it. The beloved voice line Lich gonna have your mana actually stems from this ability. I honestly believe that Valve gave Sinister Gaze mana drain just so he could keep saying it in matches. Now, Medusa's spell shield technically still exists in the game, and if anything, it's an even more important part of her kit, but it's been reworked so insanely that it honestly feels like a completely new ability. The old spell shield was a toggleable ability that would allow Medusa's incoming damage to instead attack her mana pool. It doesn't sound that different from the current incarnation, but notably, Medusa back then did not have 0 starting strength and 0 strength gain. Consequentially, even when you dealt with the mana shield, you would still have a pretty significant HP pool to try to tear through, especially when she gets that Eye of Skadi. This also meant that mana burn wasn't nearly as effective as a counter, and it meant that she could go satanic. Valve making it permanently turned on reminds me of back in the day where you would have Medusas who would accidentally forget to turn on spell shield when it came time to fight. If such a thing happened, you could look forward to seeing a third of your team's XP and net worth poof out of the game instantly with a full mana pool. Now, of all the old and weird spells in the history of Dota 2, Witchcraft on Death Prophet might be one of my favorites. This is an ability that was primarily dedicated to buffing your other abilities. For every point that you got in it, Death Prophet would get a little bit of bonus move speed, but it would more importantly lower the mana cost and cooldown of both Crypt Swarm and Silence. On top of that, it would also add additional ghosts to every cast of Exorcism. It effectively just meant that this hero had 3 abilities, and to be honest at the time, it really didn't feel like she was missing anything. The funniest thing about Witchcraft is when they removed it from the game, Valve forgot to buff the rest of her abilities as compensation, and as a result, Death Prophet was pretty much unpickable for like 2 years. Then people figured out how broken Spirit Siphon was, and this hero quickly re-entered the meta with aplomb. This is a weird one. About 5 ultimates ago, Dazzle had Weave. This ability was a giant AoE that, when cast on friendly heroes, would begin slowly accumulating armor on them over time. The problem was that the armor accumulation was incredibly slow, so you as the Dazzle player had to predict when teamfights would happen about 15 seconds in advance in order for this spell to do anything. It was incredibly clunky, difficult to use, and even if used properly, felt extremely low impact, and it's not a surprise that Valve got rid of it. I remember seeing Dazzles waddle around casting Weave on their position 1 so that they could hit jungle camps without losing quite as much HP. It was probably one of the most underwhelming ultimates in the entirety of Dota, and it makes sense why Valve has gone back to the drawing board time and time again to give Dazzle something that is both fair and balanced, failing pretty much every single time. Now when you think about cheese heroes in Dota, you probably think about Huskar, Broodmother, Meepo, heroes like that. But what if I told you that Drow Ranger was once part of that exclusive club? Precision Aura was a basic ability that granted bonus damage based on Drow's own agility to all ranged heroes near her. The general concept of a Drow strat was to stack auras and pick as many ranged heroes as you could. The classic trifecta being a mid-Drow with a position 5 Vengeful Spirit and a pos 1 Luna. The result was an insane physical damage death ball, but the cheese doesn't stop there. By activating Precision Aura, Drow could grant that damage to all ranged friendly creeps on the map, basically giving you super creeps on demand. This would push every lane, and then you as a Deathball team could run up to a tier 2 and take it incredibly quickly. And if any enemy team tried to stop you, they could also be blasted down with your insane physical damage. Drow strats were quite fun, and Valve has kept a little bit of the spirit of the strat in the game with her new innate. Still, nothing will quite compare to seeing a position 5 attempt to man up against 5 range creeps and losing. Even when it had been in the game for several years, Frozen Sigil just never felt right on Tusk. This hero already has a bunch of really weird mechanics like putting people in on the snowball and terrain manipulation with ice shards, but now you have to add micro to that list of skills. The Sigil was a summon that Tusk could bring up and then maneuver around to provide vision of any enemy heroes under it while also slowing their movement and attack speed. It was already the weirdest component of an already strange kit, and on top of that, it came with its own cosmetics. If you're one of the guys who spent 28 cents on the Steam market to turn your Frozen Sigil into the Vici Gaming logo, I'm so sorry for your loss, because it now sits completely useless in your Steam inventory. But hey, at least now you can maybe trade it for a knife in Counter-Strike. Doom's Level Death was one of the weirdest spells in the history of Dota because it involved doing math. This was a magical damage nuke that dealt a certain amount of damage, but it would also deal a bonus amount of damage if your level was equal to a multiple of a certain number that changed depending on the number of points that you had in the level, ranging from 6 to 3, unless you were 25, in which case it did the bonus damage every single time. That was it. It was just a really wacky magic damage nuke that also provided a mini stun. Now the bonus damage that it could deal, which if it was at level 4 only occurred if your level was a multiple of 3, was insane. 20% of your max HP. The problem is that if you were going to use your magic damage nuke or take advantage of the stun, you were going to cast it regardless of what level the enemy was, and therefore it wasn't really worth caring if they were a certain level or a multiple of the number of points that you had in the spell, and in any given, and what if they level up? Who knows what happens if how do you even say this? Is it level question mark death? Everyone just calls it level death, but there's a question mark right there. I hate this ability, and I'm glad that it's gone. There's still an element of it in his innate, but let's be real. Once again, everyone is going to refuse to do math if the opportunity presents itself. Doom, of all heroes, forcing his players to take a sudden math quiz was ridiculous, and this ability is not missed in the slightest. I wrote a little bit about some of the newer abilities that Valve has put in the game. Feel free to read it if you like. And now for one of my favorites. Before his current Aghanim Scepter allowed him to jump through the holes of enemy heroes, it actually allowed you to vor your teammates. Assimilate would allow you to target a friendly hero and effectively force them to use Lifestealer ulti on Lifestealer. This is pretty funny because it allowed Lifestealer to effectively eat a support to both heal them and give himself the bonus stats of Infest. But the funniest part of it all is that you could do this and then use actual Infest to get inside another friendly hero. This means that if you had any kind of playmaker support like a Vengeful Spirit or a Rubik, you could eat them, then hop inside of a Spirit Breaker, and now you are an Uber of Death, able to hop on any hero visible on the map at any time. Global 3-man ganks are hilarious, and it makes me a little sad that Valve has never looked back on this ability after replacing the Aghanim's upgrade for what it currently is. It also enabled a bunch of other bullshit, such as eating a Necrophos with a Radiance and then putting both you and him inside of a Pudge with Rot turned on. It was the Dota equivalent of the Power Rangers forming up like Voltron, and if there's one ability on this list that I hope Valve ever brings back, it's definitely Assimilate. And lastly, Tendrils of the Deep. You see, Tidehunter is defined by the fact that he is one of the single best teamfight stuns in the entire game. But Valve thought for a second when they added Aghanim Shard and said, what if he had another one? While the numbers on it were slightly different, and instead of being rocks, it was instead some kind of weird tentacle monster, this was effectively just a copy of Earthspike from Lion and Nyx Assassin. The biggest difference is that it had a comically slow travel time, so you could use Ravage and then use this to continue the chain stun, and they just have to watch it come at them while they can't do anything about it. This ability was eventually removed and replaced with Dead in the Water, which is somehow an even better ability. Valve gave it to the Croakers as compensation. If you ask me, Tidehunter getting this ability in the first place was a bit of karmic justice for all the times that Nyx and Lion players have claimed that their 2-man stun was a Ravage. In conclusion, heroes are ever-changing, and you should absolutely play them. Something tells me that after all of its comical appearances at the International, Juggernaut's Omnislash will soon be joining this list. We'll find out whenever Valve finally does drop that goddamn post-TI patch. Peace on planet Earth.